What's the strangest, weirdest thing you've seen in someone else's house? My last boss was a 42-year-old white, southern, wealthy businessman. He had a framed picture in his living room of Antoine Dodson, the hide yo kids hide yo wife dude. I went to my friend Brian's house once for dinner and his mom set 4 places. One for me, one for Brian, one for herself, and the last one was for a doll with a cutout picture of Brian's dead grandmother's face taped to the doll's face. Very creepy. I cat sat for my neighbor once. Some kitty's medication was kept cold. When I opened the fridge to grab it, I noticed tub after tub of jello. Everything in the fridge was jello. Like 40 tubs of it. Nothing else besides the medicine. Probably a special diet. That's all my boss could eat when he had diverticulitis. My Filipino friend has this thing on his mantle. It's a chili pepper with a face that has nunchucks, which are themselves made out of 2 small chili peppers. I asked him what the duck is going on, but he just chuckles and tells me not to worry. When I was in high school, my mom came home from a garage sale with a coffin. It was a wooden antique from England. It was from the 19th century. It had screw holes in the top which lifted all the way off. The couple who sold it to her were getting rid of it because they disagreed about what purpose it should serve. The wife wanted to keep using it as a coffee table blanket storage, and the husband wanted to turn it into a gum rack. My mom thought it was great as a coffee table, so my siblings and I spent the next few years asking our friends, would you like a blanket from the coffin while we watched TV? So yeah, high school was fun. I work in a job where sometimes I have to go deploy equipment in people's homes. I was doing a project where I had to set up some stuff in the kitchen of a very nice vacation rental, which was unoccupied due to the fact that this was February in northern Michigan. The whole thing was decked out to the nines in cutesy, wealthy grandma type decor, except for the kitchen. The only artwork in there was a painting of 3 fish with fetoralistic penises and testicles instead of tails, hanging above the stove so that it was the first thing you saw when you walked in. I have never been so disappointed that our project instructions forbade the photographing of property owners' belongings. This was many years ago. I had a friend in 1st grade and she was never allowed over to my house, still no idea why. But I visited her home once. It was a very tiny apartment with 2 closet-sized bedrooms. The one bedroom had a crib like what a baby half her size would sleep in. She told me that's where she slept. I found it quite odd and very disturbing even in my 6-year-old mind. I moved away the end of the school year, so never found out more. One of my old best friends is a bit on the eccentric side. Instead of a dining table and chairs, he has a full corner booth and table recovered from an Applebee's that was either closing down or remodeling. It takes up the entire dining side of his kitchen. When I was little, I had 2 friends who had a trapeze in their living room. I loved playing at their houses. My aunt has a framed photo of Meryl Streep in her computer room. I was very perplexed and asked my cousin if she noticed the rogue Meryl, and she casually said, "Oh yeah." I told mom that her and Meryl Streep looked alike, and then I guess she printed that out. You go, Aunt Yvonne. I did a window replacement on a big house in an expensive old area of town. It was lived in by an elderly lady until she passed. It was recent because all her things were still there. This place was a perfect time capsule of the 1960s. Each room had a different theme vibe and there were mannequins set up all wearing 60s clothing in every room in different scenarios. It was really bizarre. Kinda seemed like the lady was lonely or something. When my wife's grandfather died, I helped clean out the house. His wife died in 1986 and he never changed a thing. The closet still had her clothes and we even found her purse with her belongings in it, including her heart medicine and jazzercise punch card. I don't think this was a loneliness or grief thing though. He had been an alcoholic since he could get his hands on a drink, and he was always very odd in a way that no one can really tell when his dementia set in. They had a large moose head with amber glass eyes mounted high above their fireplace mantle. As I've noted on AskReddit some time ago, There were electric bulbs behind the amber glass eyes that lit up, making the mouse look like it was agitated and about to charge. New neighbors just moved in. My roommates and I offered to help them with furniture. Their townhouse was next to us and their front door was open, so we walked in, introduced ourselves and made the offer. They said to come back in about an hour. We go back when they come over, ask us to help now. When we walk in the living room, lo and behold, there's a TV hooked up with a home movie porno playing with the wife riding the husband. Needless to say, this was over 30 years. Still friends with them to this day. Update. Okay. Turns out our neighbors were swingers. This in the late 80s. It was a somewhat invitation to see if we were interested in joining them. My roommates and I were in our early 20s. The couple next door, in their 30s. My one roommate did get involved with them a few times. Fast forward to the present. I'm still friends with the couple, as is my former roommates. I dated a girl whose grandfather once demolished an old medical building. The first time I went to a Sunday dinner at her grandparents' place, he just had a ducking human skull chilling on a shelf in his living room. I mean, what else are you going to do with it? Chucking it in a dumpster seems rude, and you can't just casually show up at a cemetery with a shovel. First week freshman year. My new roommate and default best friend tells me we're going to a board game night somewhere. I figured, duck it. I've got no new friends yet. Maybe this is the way to do it. So we go. It ends up being at some sort of church house, but that's fine, I guess. We play some train board game and have an alright time with some people who only seem a little weird, but not enough to really throw me off. So the game wraps up and me and my roommate are about to go home when the pastor says, wait. You haven't seen the bathroom yet. You've got to see it. Everyone sees my bathroom. Okay. So we open the door and walk into this little bathroom where every single square inch of the walls, sink, toilet, ceiling, and floor are covered in Elvis memorabilia, posters, tickets, photos, albums, lyric sheets, everything you can imagine. And mounted above the toilet is a creepy, mostly realistic Elvis animatronic singing head. Needless to say, this was discomfort I had never felt before. It was beyond being a fan or obsessive or any of that. It was really frightening. So we turn around to him holding a guest book for us to sign. Obviously I made up an email and phone number so he wouldn't email me or call me. And then my roommate, a devout Catholic, tells him he appreciates it but he's Jewish and he just wanted to come with me while I checked out their small group. That was a weird night. Dead tomato plants. Apparently he didn't want his garden to end and thought he could keep them alive in the living room. They were dead though. Let me walk you through a house I visited of an acquaintance's father. The living room had a collection of old death pose photos from random families. Had to be at least 50 because the wall was covered, and a curio cabinet of old Nazi memorabilia, including a Nazi china set. WTF. His bedroom had a lifelike alien laying on the bed just chilling. In the corner of the room sat a rocking chair with a lifelike replica of the mother from Psycho. Needless to say, I got the hell out of there and haven't been back since. I used to get dumped at my stepdad's mother's house as a kid periodically. She had a village of 3-story micro apartments in her backyard for her dozens of yapping pet chihuahuas, complete with ramps for access and little front doors, at which the chihuahuas would appear and bark fanatically at the slightest sound, like tiny furry housewives in some sort of dog version of a Brazilian favela. And stacks of newspapers several feet high in the house through which one had to navigate to get from room to room. I don't even think the house had electricity. But if it did, there were never any lights on. I wandered out to the garage one day and found a petrified Siamese cat, flat as a paper plate, wedged between 2 boxes. I told my stepdad about it and he demanded to see it, exclaiming, "There's Sniffy. We always wondered about him." He then took the flat cat and wedged it in the crook of a tree outside our own dilapidated home. It remained there for some months till some desperate scavenging animal took it away. This woman gained a small amount of notoriety later on when the director Richard Linklater featured her in his film Waking Life. He saw her as a lovable eccentric. But I knew her as a tyrannical psycho who made it her mission to ruin as many lives as possible. I had a similar objection to Linklater's nutty fascination with Alex Jones, who is also featured as some sort of anti-hero in the film. That veered wildly off topic. But so be it. My ex-in-laws have a stuffed armadillo just chillin' in the living room. Oh god. Calling myself out here. When I moved out for college still have. Actually, this set of nail clippers with a little built-in receptacle to catch your nail clippings. Really handy. But obviously you have to dump the nails out once in a while. Decided to clip my nails before bed one night. Clipper was full. Dumped old nails into an empty bowl in my room because I didn't have a garbage can and was too lazy to go out. Met up with friends at school the next day, new friends. I was from out of town, and they all decided to come over later. I forgot all about the bowl full of nails, but of course it was the first damn thing they saw when they entered my room. I tried to explain, but it just seemed to make things worse. Still makes me cringe. A man in a hospital bed without a nose. I was around 9 when we were invited to the backyard. Everyone was running through the house and I was trying to keep up. The sight of that poor man stopped me in my tracks. I knew a lady who lost her nose to cancer when I was little. She had a pretty cool deal going with Virginia Tech. She was a model for students learning to make and fit prostheses. So she always had nice noses for free. Sex swing. It was just right out in the open in the basement. And they were not the kind of people you wanted to imagine in a sex swing. I worked with a guy that would just put a potted plant in the sex swing when people came over. Like, that's an unusual place for a potted plant. Hanging low in the middle of the room. Sitting in your sex swing. When I was a kid there was a lady in the neighborhood that had her entire home religiously decorated. I'm talking crosses and placards in every room. Plus religious themed light switch covers. Rugs. Mats. Towels. Cutting boards. Cups. Plates. Tablecloths. Sheets. Pillowcase. Clocks. Shower curtain. Just everything. It didn't weird me out too much. But it did a lot of others. At my grandma's house growing up, my cousins and I thought it would be funny to leave a single Dorito on a dresser upstairs because my grandma couldn't go upstairs and only used it for guests. That Dorito sat there for 5 years amongst these porcelain knickknacks. We never disturbed it and always laughed about it. I think the most disturbing part was that it never went bad or brought in pests. My best friend's mom is obsessed with chicken trinkets. I'm talking chicken pictures on plates. Chicken pillows. Porcelain chickens. Pictures of chickens on blankets. Everyone I know has just gotten used to it. But it's always funny watching someone new walk in. Opened the fridge of an apartment I moved into. There was a gigantic pig sculpture that had a big smiling face and, guessing, Chinese characters on it. Asked my new roommates what it was. They both replied, "Don't ask." We called it the fridge pig. House sat for a family that had a zebra carpet in the living room. The head was still intact with the eyes wide open and the rest of the body was flattened out into a carpet. They shot it themselves on a safari in Africa. Strange. Slept with a girl a few times. She had a wall of tarantulas and small snakes. Horror memorabilia everywhere including stick-on bloody feet making a trail through her kitchen. Bedroom was wall-to-wall mirrors. My mother-in-law keeps anything she finds that is shaped like a heart, seashells. Pieces of glass. Rocks. Potato chips. Yes. Potato chips. They sit on a shelf in the living room. Probably late to the party. But I got invited to an old friend's house that I knew in high school. Ran into him at the store. Asked me if I was busy, which I wasn't. So I popped over. Hadn't seen him in around 8 years or so. Get into his room. And there's a life-sized rubber 6 doll, think real doll style, dressed up to look like his ex from around the same period. Hair was dyed. Makeup was done. clothes all hand selected from local thrift shops to perfectly match and preserve her style from literally a decade ago. Sheet was ducked up. I noped out after a half hour and have been avoiding him ever since. Reminded me of some serial killer fetish or something. We went on a tour of historic homes. All were occupied and lavishly furnished. One of them had a disturbing piece of art over the fireplace. It was a very realistic painting. It might have even been a stylized photograph. It showed a little girl in a white dress. Like a first communion dress. The child was laying in a gutter covered with blood. It was so awful and realistic. I could not imagine why someone would display it. Professor at my, now, wife's university had students over for meals every now and then. His wife was a belly dancer. Life-sized painting of her naked was prominently hung in the dining room. Conversation starter indeed. Nice tits. Pass the potatoes. My grandfather had a pair of medieval shields mounted to the wall above his fireplace. One had a flail and sword behind it. I think the other had 2 axes. They were purely decorative. But it made their Tudor-style house look extra castle-like. Decorative prison bars in the dining room. I went to an open house and part of the wall had been cut out between the dining and living room and replaced with metal prison bars. The owners said their daughter was an art student. Wife's grandmother has a 11x16 framed holographic pic of crucified Jesus complete with blood and crown of thorns. Creepiest part. It's in the bathroom and the eyes follow you. I used to do housework for an older gay man. His house was filled with large, artsy banged pictures of young, very fit naked men, penises showing, carrying naked babies. It was like Geddes meets a homoerotic Calvin Klein commercial from the early 90s. To be clear, the men weren't doing anything sexual with the babies, but it was waff. When I was in high school I replaced my parents' wedding picture, which was large and framed and placed prominently as the centerpiece of our mantle, with a giant picture, courtesy of the internet, of a naked oily male model holding only a piece of metal over his junk which had an indent like his rock hard big dick punched it. It took my parents days to notice. But when they did they thought it was so funny that they left it. They had people over often over the next 3 years. But not one person said anything about it. Everyone saw it. It was the centerpiece of our whole living room. But in rural Texas, people don't ask about things like that. So it went unmentioned. Who knows what conversations they were having when they got home. Dated a girl in Japan and stayed at her parents' house one night. I looked in the closet of the room I was staying in and there was a black and white photo of man with a vase below it. Apparently I was assigned to the room where they kept the family funerary urns. Just kicked it that night with her dead relatives. Framed photo of Chad, the lead singer of Nickelback, in the middle of the wall next to the bed of this guy's dorm room. He would say bye Chad every time he left the room, and he would also tell him good night every night. My great aunt had this beautiful, like decorative birdhouse or something. I was 12 and had never visited her home before. I have a very curious mind, and upon seeing this neat little birdhouse I had to touch it. Well, the damn thing nearly imploded. She simply walked over and said, "You shouldn't touch things that don't belong to you." Turns out that this birdhouse was designed to do that, to teach curious little ducks like me a lesson. My boyfriend has an autopsy table in the backyard. He got it from our college when they were tossing out the old ones. His family is really big into Halloween. So his folks were really excited about him bringing this home. You know that scene in Umbridge's office in Harry Potter 5, Order of the Phoenix, when Harry gets detention and walks into her office? And she has those magic plates with cats in them? I've seen a non-magical version of that in someone's office before. For those that haven't a clue what I'm talking about, picture like a 10x5, 10 across 5 down, of dinner plates mounted on a wall with a picture of a cat on it.